Welcome to today's edition of Gibsons Caring Corner. I'm excited that we have Mr. Bob Crosswhite with us today with Crosswhite, a local law firm that deals with a lot of issues that our clients and their children have to deal with whenever we are at the stage of senior care for the aging adults. So today I'm going to ask Mr. Crosswhite some questions that hopefully you will take back information. And he is in North Carolina, so that's important that the law that we're going to be talking about is North Carolina. And the first question that Creighton and I, when we go into a home, we're going to ask, who is your power of attorney? If something were to happen to you and you were no longer able to make decisions for yourself, who is able to do that for you? Can you tell today's listeners what that means?
Well, when I meet with clients, one of the things I tell them is the most important documents that you can have while you're alive is a general durable power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney. What the durable power of attorney does allow someone to be able to make decisions for you if you're not able to do so yourself. If they needed to access your bank account, pay your bills, sell your real estate, sell your car, communicate with the power company, the durable power of attorney will allow them to do that. And the reason it's called durable is that it's even effective in the event of your incapacity. The other important document is the healthcare power of attorney. Who is to make medical decisions for you if you're not able to do so? Who's able to communicate to the doctor, the facility regarding treatment care if you're not able to do so yourselves? Those are, I tell clients repeatedly, those are the most important documents you can have while you're alive. Absent that, then it gets a lot more cumbersome. I have people come to me on a regular basis that don't have anything in place. And the question is can you get something in place now? And so that comes down to the question of competency. Are they able to understand what's going on? Are they able to make financial decisions and things like that? Are they able to communicate? Are they able to write? That sort of thing. And then, without that, then you're looking at a guardianship. And a guardianship, I tell clients, tends to be expensive and time consuming.
Well, I don't know how many people that I've worked with that had a guardianship, but that's interesting. So that would be important for someone to know what would be best for them. And of course, going to a professional law firm, it would be a great place to go to get that help. We also run into many veterans, veterans that have fought in a war and veterans that haven't. And there's certain times that a veteran needs help and they've never used the services. For some reason, it's like there's guilt associated with using services that they get for free because they've served and they served so well. So how do you help a veteran?
Well, a lot of times when I meet with clients, a lot of them are veterans. And some of them have already got their service-connected disability rating and they're already receiving some benefits to some extent. Though one of the things I tend to do when there is a veteran is I refer them to the local veteran service office. Every county in every state has a local veteran service office. There's a veteran service officer there that will work with veterans. They know the system. They know what benefits are available. They help with the application. They go through that process. So if you are a veteran, I would make recommendation you contact the local VSO office and to see exactly what benefits that may be available. I've had clients over the years that have come in and I referred them there, and then when I met him again to get some of their documents signed, found out that he was eligible for new hearing aids. And so he got his new hearing aids paid for, and then he was given a disability rating, and he was able to get a pension and even back pay on the pension. So, there are benefits sometimes that veterans have that they may not be aware of, but just contact the local veteran service office.
And that's great. The equipment and the items that the veterans have received from the Veterans Administration has been significant. That I've seen that they get supplies and things that the regular person honestly has to pay a lot of money for, and they're provided these items at no charge. But they have earned those, and we're proud that we at Home Instead, we offer a discount to all of our veterans that we provide service for and their spouses. So we are proud to do that and to serve that community. And I will say that I've seen some that have they get pensions and they have like TRICARE insurance, and then others that get respite services. So in our community, some are with the Salisbury VA and some are with the Asheville VA, and then they get respite or in-home aid services. So there's like different levels of care, different things that are provided, but you have to contact those Veterans Administration professionals to walk that walk and go through that process. I wished I could contact them for them, but they won't let me.
Well, the thing about the veterans is that, a lot of them may have the questions of what happens if I go into a nursing home, long-term care, and that sort of thing. And a lot of times the VA facilities have long-term care type facilities for whether Alzheimer's, dementia, or other type skilled care type facilities. And they also cost significantly less than the traditional ones that are outside in your community. And veterans will get rated depending on their disability, whether they have priority. And so a lot of times I will tell the veterans, or their spouses, get them on the waiting list over there. Mm-hmm. And I've had some of the spouses tell me they really like the facility, particularly the one over in Salisbury. I've worked with some that's had their family members in the facility over at Black Mountain. And I think there's a facility down near Raleigh as well. And there's probably several others through North Carolina, but those are the local ones that I'm familiar with. So.
And whenever you think about it, whenever you're a veteran and you're serving, you're learning the skills that are required to be able to provide care. And so, I would think in a lot of these hospitals, not that I know that, or facilities, you would have the opportunity for veterans to be serving veterans. And that would be a great thing in my eyes if I was a veteran needing that care, that I would possibly have that opportunity to be served by a veteran.
Well, yeah, there are a lot of veterans out there that do offer that. One additional thing that I think veterans should be aware of, and not every veteran will qualify, and this is not service-connected rating, but there's a pension program called Aid and Attendance Pension Benefit. It's designed to help veterans to cover costs and their spouses with assisted living expenses, either at home or an assisted living facility. And you have to qualify for that, and there are several different rounds to qualify for it. But anytime I meet with a veteran, I go through those questions, see if they can qualify. Sometimes you can do planning to allow them to qualify sooner. And the VSO office will definitely be able to help with veterans to receive that benefit. And for a veteran, it's around $2,200 a month, and a spouse of a veteran, it's around half of that. So it sometimes can be very helpful when you've got at-home care or an assisted living, or if you've got a spouse that needs care as well. So, that's another benefit that veterans should always check into, is the AIDS and Attendance Pension Benefit.
Very good. Thank you. We mentioned nursing home. How about long-term care planning? So how can children in their 50s, 60s help their parents plan if nothing is in place?
Well, the first thing is, obviously, we mentioned earlier, is make sure you have a very good power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney. I like, particularly when it comes to long-term care planning, have a power of attorney that has a lot of authority, that's very powerful, that's broad in authority, because you need the ability to do planning in the event one of your spouse or your parent goes in long-term care, how to protect the assets, how to ensure that the at-home spouse gets the care they needed or the benefits they need, and having a good power of attorney is very important. Most power of attorneys I see are statutory short-form power of attorneys. They're good for banking and things like that, but when it comes to a more advanced planning, you really needed more enhanced power of attorney. So that would be one thing to look at. Anytime I work with clients on their estate plans or whatever planning we do, I always want to see their power of attorneys and to see if we need to upgrade them. And so certainly that is one thing to do, is make sure that your power of attorneys are in place. The other thing I always verify with people is make sure your beneficiary designations are in place, updated beneficiaries, whether on life insurance, retirement account, annuities. In my experience, missing or outdated beneficiaries is the biggest issue that comes up many times. Sometimes if you don't have a beneficiary, it would go to your estate, which means probate. If you have your spouse or your children, that all avoids probate. And so make sure your beneficiary designations are updated as well. And then I look at the basic estate planning documents, which is primarily a last will and testament. Sometimes people go with the living trust agreement. Make sure those things are in place. And then I like to look and review, kind of assets they have and make sure things are organized, simplified, they know where things are, because that makes things so much easier in the event of an issue that comes up. And sometimes in long-term care planning, what if I go into a nursing home? Sometimes there are things we can do in advance. That would be setting up different types of trusts to protect assets. But many times we do what we call crisis planning. Mom is in the nursing home or dad's in the nursing home. Mom is like, what can I do? I don't want to lose the house. How much income do I get? I don't want to have to spend all our life savings. And so that is where crisis Medicaid planning comes into play. And so I can work with people, do an assessment, do evaluation, determine what is the best course of action, and even go forward with filing the Medicaid application for clients.
Very good. And making these types of decisions before something happens is so important so that you don't have your behavior in the way, because it's emotional whenever you're having loved ones going into facilities and you're uncertain of what the next steps are. But whenever you go to a professional like Mr. Crosswhite here, then they can help you through those things so that you know everything's in place whenever the need arises, if the need arises.
And it's always good to consult with an elder law attorney. So an attorney that focuses in elder law is a specialty. Every state will have elder law attorneys. Most of the law when it comes to Medicaid is federal, though within states, some states have specific things that they do. So I'm licensed in North Carolina, and so I can work with people in North Carolina. If there's someone that has family members out of state, we'll locate an attorney in that state to work with them. But it's an area called elder law. You can get on the website, Google elder law, and find an attorney in your area, and a lot of times you'll find several listed. But make sure it's someone that's a competent elder law attorney that knows what they're talking about and doing. Very
good. So and I hate to, I really don't want to put, the fear of the what ifs, but if someone did not plan and them and their spouse were in an automobile accident and they both died and no planning whatsoever had been done, and let's say they have 4 children and all the children are grown, what would happen?
Well, if they can't really determine, let's say both died, sometimes they can determine one died first, but everything will flow down to the children at some point. That's called intestate succession. If they don't have a will, they died what they call intestate. That means dying without a will. So North Carolina has a pre-written will for everybody, but a lot of times it's good to still have a will in place because you get to appoint appoint your executor of the estate, who to handle the estate. You can appoint guardians for your minor children. If you have minor children, you can leave things in trust for those minor children, that sort of thing, until they get of age. Otherwise, their inheritance is held through the clerk of court until they reach 18, and then they get control of the funds. And sometimes, if you have an 18-year-old that will inherit, $250,000, that's probably not the best thing. And so it's good to do planning in place. And so I would certainly recommend people sit down with an estate planning attorney and look through their basic estate planning documents, make sure they've got these things in place to protect their family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my father passed away November the 22nd, and he did do all the planning. He just didn't tell me anything about it. So there were wills in place. There were trusts in place. I knew nothing about any of those. But whenever you said update your beneficiaries, I had moved. So the addresses that the trust sent me information to, I was no longer there. So it's really important for you to make sure those things are up to date. When my sister received hers, and she had not moved, she told me and asked me if I had received mine. So I'm like, okay, I need to investigate this. So it is very important that you do that because it matters. And so keeping those things up to date if something were to happen to you. And if you're the children taking care of your parents, what if something were to happen to you? You're the one that's overseeing the care, making sure the caregivers are there. Maybe you are the caregiver. And so what is going to happen to your parents if something happens to you? And so having those things in place matters a lot.
Well, and it's also, I think, important to have a conversation even with your children. Because you mentioned when your parent passed away, you had no idea what was going on.
No idea.
And I have a lot of people, they're very protective, they're very
Yes.
closed, they don't want to tell their children anything. But, and it can be very difficult. I've had when children lost a parent and they're trying to figure out where the will is, where this is, and where their bank accounts are, where their car titles are, those sort of things. And sometimes it can take a while. And I've even had surprised financial accounts show up a couple years later that no one knew existed. So it's always good to have these conversations with your children. This is where we keep these documents. This is the role. These are the executors. Everything's here. We've got all our car titles, our bank statements, life insurance, that sort of thing. So the children know where these things are and that the parents has had a discussion with them, because it makes things much easier when the parent does pass.
Absolutely. All the titles, please put them in one place. I'm just saying. Anyway, yes. All right. So next on my list here, I had down just, that we had mentioned business succession planning. So, what if we have taken care of many people that owned a business and we were still driving them to work, to their business, and then bringing them back home. So what's the importance of business succession planning?
Well, obviously, if you got a business, and some businesses are small, some businesses are large. And so, the question is, if something happens to you, what happens to the business? And in some situations, if you're like a sole proprietor, that business is gone because there's no one there to operate it, and your clients are left hanging. But sometimes it's good to decide, what do I want to do to ensure that my business will continue? Now, if people have children that are working in the business and can run the business and can take over the business, that's a good choice. But sometimes they don't. Their children don't want to have anything to do with the business. And, the question some clients say, well, as you get older, do you want to look to sell your business? That's sometimes the best time to buy a buyer, when it's at its peak income and that sort of thing, so you can get the maximum value for it. But if you don't, then have some sort of succession plan. Is there someone in the company that would be interested in taking it over? Is there someone out there that would buy it? Is there a competitor that would be interested in buying it? I've had clients where they've approached competitors that have bought their existing business out because they wanted to take over that particular market they service. So that is a very important thing, to make sure not only your family is taken care of, but also your children and your clients and the business people you work in a business. And I do know in some situations where two men have a business, they're partners. If one of them passes away, the surviving owner doesn't want his partner's wife to be his new partner. And so sometimes you need to have some sort of buy-sell agreement in place so that you can work the arrangement where the surviving owner buys the business out of the deceased owner. And so that is a very important type planning to have in place.
And that's, I always like to put life experiences into that. And so like Creighton and I, we have one child. She's 23. She's a fabulous school teacher, but she's 23. So our plans is that she can't have access to even consider anything till after she's 25. And that way she's just a little bit more mature, a little bit more possibly ready. So having something in place if something were to happen to you at the best interest, and maybe it is someone that's going to oversee trust. They're going to oversee my mother that lives with me, making sure that she has the adequate care that she needs. Taking care of my dog. So you have pets in your family. Who's going to take care of your pets if something were to happen to you? Yeah, and just having all of that in place, the nutrition, your family, your business, it takes a lot. And having a professional to help you walk that walk and go through those steps, I think, is your best choice. Do you have any other final words?
Well, you mentioned pets, and I've had a number of clients over the years. You can create and leave money in a trust for your pets. I've had people set up and they'll designate a custodian for the pet, someone to take care of the pet and raise the pet. You can have it set up where you can leave money in a trust for the pet to take care of the pet. I've had a number of people have done that over the years. Another area to be aware of is special needs issues. Children that have, maybe special needs. I have a lot of people come to me and their children are on Medicaid and different benefits like that. If they inherit from you, they would lose eligibility to those benefits. So you need to make sure you need to do planning through special needs trust to be able to protect those assets so you can leave them inheritance, but they don't lose their Medicaid and other benefits out there. So
That hadn't thought of that. That's good. I have to say I'm going to let everybody have a giggle out of this. So, one of our first clients, I'm going to say 18 years ago, the husband and wife decided themselves to go into a facility, but the facility did not allow pets, and they had 2 cats. So one of our first customers were 2 cats on Broad Street that our caregiver had to go in each day and feed and clean out the litter box. So you do have to have things in place, and that's the way that they decided to take care of their pets. And we laughed about that, but people love their animals, and they wanted to make sure that they were provided care, and we did do that. All right, anything else?
no, but thank you very much for this
All right.
opportunity. So.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and I hope you have enjoyed today's Gibson's Caring Corner.
Hi, welcome back to Health Tips with Cale, your exercise science, health, and fitness enthusiast. So today we're going to start part 1 of our part 2 series, the benefits of walking. So a lot of us see walking as just something that we normally do throughout the day. We don't really look at it as exercise. But what happens if we use walking as exercise? We take an additional 30 minutes 5 days a week to just get outside and walk. Well, there are many health benefits such as lowered blood pressure, lowered blood sugar levels, increased vitamin D, stress and anxiety relief, help with sleep, and also help with weight loss and many more things. So today I want to go over the reduced blood pressure, reduced blood sugar levels, and the increased vitamin D levels, which vitamin D in of itself has a lot of health benefits. So with walking, you might notice that your heart rate might spike a little bit or it might go up a little bit. Well, that increased heart rate then increases the blood flow throughout the body, and increased blood flow throughout the body means you have now lowered blood pressure, because now your body isn't having to your heart isn't having to squeeze so hard in order to push the blood to the areas that your body really needs it, like your brain and your vital organs. And so there's a journal here published in the American Journal of Hypertension in 2014 that said walking for 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, significantly reduced blood pressure in older adults with hypertension. There's another study that goes on to talk about your blood sugar levels. So walking can have a positive effect on your blood sugar levels. So if you think about it, walking takes energy, right? Well, where do we get our energy from? Well, we get it from the sugars and the food that we eat. So if we have a lot of sugar floating around our blood, so that's our blood sugar levels, and we start walking, well, our body's going to naturally start to pull from that resource to help us move forward. And so there are certain studies here that go on to say that type 2, that walking has a positive effect on our blood sugar levels for those with type 2 diabetes or risk of developing it. They go on to say that when we walk, our muscles use glucose, sugar, for energy, as I was just saying, which can help lower blood sugar levels. It can also help with increased insulin sensitivity. So we talked about that a little bit during our diabetes episode. It also goes on saying that a study published in the Journal of Applied Physiology in 2017 found that a single 15-minute walk after each meal helped to reduce postprandial, so after meal, blood sugar levels in individuals with type 2 diabetes. And so what that means is that when we go to eat our food, our body now creates this sugar, this energy, but when we go for a 15-minute walk, now we have to use some of that energy to help walk, to help exercise. And so not all of that sugar is now being stored in our body. Another study published in the Journal of Diabetes Care in 2006 found that walking for 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, significantly improved glycemic control in individuals with type 2 diabetes. So if you think about this, one study says that it helps with insulin sensitivity, which means our bodies are more capable of using insulin more efficiently. So now we don't have a insulin, now we're not struggling to use insulin. Now we're able to produce insulin and our body takes it right away. It helps to move things along. But because of that, now we can also use the sugars that it attaches to get it into the cells a lot more efficiently. And so with that, it helps to keep our blood sugar levels a little bit lower, which is also our glycemic control. And then vitamin D. So vitamin D is also known as the sunshine vitamin, right? So we all say, oh, go outside, get your vitamin D. But what exactly does vitamin D do for us? And how does walking have to deal with vitamin D? Well, if you're going outside to walk for 30 minutes a day or 15 minutes after a meal, then we're more than likely going to get our vitamin D from the sun, which is, it might kind of sound a little weird, but what happens is the sun's rays, pretty much in a very generalized term, touches our skins and our bodies start to produce vitamin C or vitamin D. And so vitamin D has its vast majority of things that it helps us with. So it helps us with bone health, immune system, inflammation. It helps with our brain health. It helps with our mood, our heart health. And it also helps reduce the risk for other cancers. So what if you're not capable of exactly walking for 30 minutes a day? Then what should you do? Well, at the very least, I would suggest just being outside for 30 minutes a day would be beneficial. If you can, just go outside, maybe walk down the driveway and then back up, or walk down your road and back. You don't have to do it very fast, but just trying to do a little bit of something is better than nothing. I mean, they even said 15 minutes after a meal helps with your blood sugar levels. So walking at any amount of time is going to be very beneficial. And so we also talked last week about how walking after a stressor can also help with your stress levels. And we'll get to that on the next episode. So I want you guys to go outside, enjoy the weather, and go for a little bit of a walk. I'll see you guys again next week. Cheers.
Let's go back through time and talk about the stories of Elizabeth Anne Rinehart Gibson in Mooresville, North Carolina. Here we go. Little do I know about my grandmother and granddad Stafford. I barely remember grandmother wore a little black and white gingham apron with big pockets filled with her snuff can, sassafras toothbrush, and silver kisses, and ball bat suckers, which she gave to all of us kids. Then I barely recall Jack and Alice taking John Blaine, Alice, Mother Jeanette, Joan Rinehart, Grandmother Stafford, and me to the beach. As we were getting all of our belongings out of the car, Grandmother mashed her thumb in the car door. She was in terrible pain. The Stafford reunion was always held at Taylorsville Beach, where the old Stafford home place was. It was always in May every year, and Mother never missed one. In McAdenville, where Dad and Mother grew up, homecoming was always held in October each year, and they didn't like to miss that either. Mother said one time she and her sister Fanny were over at Little River, where a pond still is in Alexander County. They wanted to get to the other side of the bank. A little boy had a flat-bottomed boat on the pond. They talked him into riding them across the pond in his boat. He rowed to approximately the middle of the pond, jumped out, and swam to the other side, leaving the girls squalling in the middle of the pond. Well, a word about Granddad. The only things I know of him, he was a mountain man, lazy as a hound dog, a shoemaker, and a leather smith. When they lived in Catawba, North Carolina, near the railroad, Mother and Aunt Fanny and Carl were always sent out with tow sacks to pick up coal from the railroad tracks, where the train cars dropped the coal. This is how their house was heated. Coal was also used for the cook stove. There were two little old ladies who lived near the Staffords, and Mother and Aunt Fanny would go over to visit them. They liked to dip snuff and taught Mother and Aunt Fanny to dip snuff. My grandmother dipped snuff too. That was a thing back then. Back to Granddad Stafford, they must have lived here, there, and everywhere. Mother was born in Iredell County at Bradford's Crossroads. They lived in the Taylorsville area, Gaston County, Catawba, and Ellerby, North Carolina, where he still did shoemaking. He once had an affair with a young girl, and she died when she gave birth to their baby. I don't know if that baby lived or died, but Granddad Stafford carried her picture in his wallet along with the lock of the girl's hair. He told Grandmother of all of this and made her promise when he died to bury her picture and lock of hair under his casket pillow. Do you believe how stupid my grandmother must have been? She did exactly what he asked her to do. Back to a story about Dad and Granddad Rinehart. They had horses, mules, donkeys, guineas, etc. all the time. Carl Anderson was a merchant below Mayhewtown who wanted his horse bred. He had Granddad's stock to take care of his need. Mr. Carl never paid Granddad for the service, and one day they ran into one another in Mooresville on Main Street, in front of Turner Hardware and the First National Bank at that time. Granddad asked for his fee, and they got into a terrible argument. Granddad Rinehart had a bad temper, and of course, he could out-curse any sailor who ever lived. He began cursing, and Mrs. Elva Alexander, Mr. Carl's wife, jumped up on Granddad's back with her legs wrapped around his waist and started beating away at his head. I know his cursing would have picked up tempo by this time. Mr. Carl and Dad were going at each other with fists. By the time the law got to them, Mrs. Elva had Granddad on the ground, sitting over his stomach, horseback style, beating his head against the concrete street. Crowds had gathered and joined the sights. Granddad was charged with profanity and paid the $5 fine. Mr. Carl was fined, as was Dad. I think Miss Elva maybe got by without a fine. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's edition of Going Back Through Time with Elizabeth Anne Rinehart Gibson.
Thank you for watching Caring Corner. Make sure you head over to our Facebook and YouTube channel where you will find this program along with others. Be sure that you subscribe, like, and click the notification bell so that you will receive notifications for our weekly program. Don't forget to share this program to your social media platforms. If there's a question that you would like to ask, make sure to email it to caringcorner22@gmail.com. We hope to see you on the next episode of Caring Corner.